Hey everybody, this is my 55-gallon Gourami tank, and I had planned on coming down here and actually working on this tank today, and I wound up falling asleep, and I slept for way longer than I expected, and it just kind of wrecked my whole evening, and so nothing is really getting done on this tank tonight. But I did want to at least take a couple of minutes and talk about it, because as I was feeding the tanks while I was in here this evening, I got to thinking about the quality of the water and the amount of, just vegetative growth going on in the tank. Because remember, algae is a plant, so as gross as that looks, it's still just a lot of plant material growing in the tank. It's a lot of vegetation growing in here. So I wondered what it was doing to my nitrate levels. I've said over and over as we've looked at this tank, and I keep talking about one of these days I'm going to get to getting in there and working on it. I keep trying to reassure everybody that it just looks awful. The water is fine. And if you're familiar with my videos and you're familiar with my tanks, you'll know that I'm not one that's overly concerned about nitrates, and most of my tanks have nitrates that regularly climb up into the red. Being red on the API test kit is what I'm referring to. And so tonight I wound up taking a test of this tank just for the sake of finding out what the nitrate levels were. Again, it's not necessarily anything I'm concerned about, but it is a good way to get an idea of what's going on in the tank. You can use the nitrate level as sort of a proxy. When the nitrates are beginning to get up there, so is everything else. All of the other organics that are building up, whether it's the phosphates, or who knows, whatever other type of stuff builds up in the tank over time from the fish poop and the waste and all that stuff. If you look at the nitrate levels, you can kind of use that again as a proxy to what else is going on in the tank. So I decided tonight we would go ahead and test the nitrate levels just to see what was going on in here. And I was kind of surprised to see that's it. I know you're not really getting the best of ideas of what that looks like under this lighting, but it gives you enough of an idea. It's definitely not even into the really orange yet. That's about 20 to maybe 30 parts per million on the high side. I don't even think it's 30 parts per million. It seems more to me around 15 to 20. So that's pretty interesting. This is one of the tanks that is usually pretty high on the nitrates. It's also a tank that traditionally had a lot more fish in it. Just over the last year or so, I've lost a lot of fish. I'm really not sure where this tank is going to go in the very near future, but it is going to get changed up somewhat. I'm going to get that clown loach out of there and get him over in my 125 with my other clown loaches, where it can be in its own company. It's also getting a little bit large for this tank. I'm going to get in there and just scour and scrub the tank down and get all the glass cleaned. I'm probably going to go ahead and just pull this big chunk of Java out of there. I've always got Java in the other room. As usual, I'll put my email down below if you're interested in any aquatic plants, Java fern, water sprite. I've got lots of it growing in the other room. So I'm probably going to just pull this out and start with some fresh Java. Now, I know you can't really tell, but that is actually rooted onto a big piece of wood. And this whole section in here is a big chunk of wood that you just can't even see. But that is going to have to, get rearranged. I'm going to have to pull that Java fern off of there and sort of start that process over. I'm just tired of fighting this tank just enough to get it looking decent, only to have it all come back again. So I think we're going to hit it hard this next time. And I'm probably also going to go and get a Siamese algae eater or something. I would love to be able to put some snails in here, but of course with the loaches, I do have more than just that clown loach. I've got skunk loaches, I've got an angelicus loach, and although we never see it because it hides under this big piece of wood that I know is difficult to see, but this whole thing here is a big piece of wood, and underneath of that is a red tail loach, or sometimes they're known as blue loaches, and that will come out at night and eat the snails or anything else I put in there. So putting some mystery snails or nearite snails in there won't help. But I do have other algae eating type fish in this tank. I've got the hillstream loach, I've got a rubber lip pleco in there, and I can always add some more of those over time. So once I get the stuff beaten back, if they won't get on the glass back there and scour all that, or they won't get on the Java fern and scour all that. If I can get it as clean as that, then they will scour it and they'll start working on it. And if a little bit of this stuff starts growing, it just gets scraped off and eaten as they go. I'm not really sure what happened, but something shifted in my tank and my chemistry changed, my water chemistry changed, and I just had an explosion of this stuff, and I'm not exactly sure why or what happened. So, you know, once I get back on top of it, I think we'll be good to go again. I know he's kind of hard to see, but my striped Raphael is almost sort of making an appearance for us down there. In fact, you can kind of see how you can see these sort of hard lines on the edge of this. That is where my algae eaters have been scraping against the glass, or I should say my off-box grazers rather than the algae eaters. And the algae eater would be fish like these, the little Endler's guppies or regular old guppies, mollies, platies. Those all eat algae, which is more akin to them doing like the nibbling, and they just sort of groom the algae that's growing longer. The fish like my little hillstream loach right here making an appearance for us, that is more of an off-box grazer or like a sucker fish. They actually scrape whatever surface they're on clean. They'll scour the glass. So typically people refer to them as algae eaters, but that is more of an off-box grazer, whereas the algae eaters are more of your mollies and platies and guppies and things like that. So I do have both in this tank. I just need to get back on top of, you know, getting it reasonably clean and then letting them do the maintenance and stay on top of it. And again, I might even add one or two more in there just to keep on top of this. And I did want to add one final thought, since we're talking about doing water testing and doing the chemistry, you know, water chemistry and all that stuff on here. I shot a video recently where I spoke about the idea that if you can't afford a test kit, then you probably can't afford an aquarium. And as I suspected, a lot of people sort of misunderstood what I was saying there and interpreted that as you can't maintain an aquarium without testing your water. And that's not what I was saying. I certainly don't recommend not being able to test your water, but you can certainly do it. There's lots and lots of people out there that never ever test their water. There's lots of people out there that never change their water. So it can be done in the same way that you can drive a car without a seatbelt, or you can drive a car without a speedometer. It's not recommended, but it can be done. That wasn't the point of my video. That wasn't what I was trying to say. What I was trying to get across was for the people that ask me questions about their water, they want to know about their water, they're having issues, and when I suggest to them to test their water, I get told they can't afford a test kit, that's too much money, etc., etc., and that's the point I'm making. If you can't afford a $20 test kit when you need one, then this may not be the hobby for you, because it is an expensive hobby. Stuff costs money. It costs money just to set up a tank and have fish in it. And if you're in a situation where you're so tight on money that $20 is simply too much for you when you're having a problem, then maybe this is not the hobby for you. And that's the point I was making, that if you can't afford the test kit, then you probably can't afford to keep an aquarium up and running, because they're expensive hobbies. You know, it is a pet in a sense, keeping a fish, but it's also a hobby in another sense. It's an odd sort of little bit of both. I've talked about this in other videos. You know, do you consider your fish pets, or do you consider your fish tank a hobby? And most people consider it somewhere between the two. And a hobby is something you do with disposable money. Nobody has a hobby when they don't have a little bit of extra money. So that's the point I was making, that this is an expensive hobby, and if something simple like a test kit is going to break your bank, then maybe you want to reconsider what hobby you're going to get involved in. So that was my final thoughts on that video. Again, I think a lot of people sort of misunderstood that I was saying that you simply can't have a tank up and running if you're not constantly testing your water and, you know, have a deep understanding of your water chemistry and all that. Some people said I was making the hobby sound too daunting and making it sound too challenging for people to get involved in it, and that sort of thing. And if you don't think trying to deal with this is too challenging, then I can't imagine how checking for your nitrates would be something that you would find too difficult and too challenging. If we're going to get in here and try to beat something like this back, and I'm showing you videos about this is what your aquarium might look like someday, if this isn't daunting, if this isn't discouraging, then I surely can't imagine how the suggestion that you check your water occasionally would be something that would be too daunting. You know, you deal with this, but oh, I'm not going to check my nitrates occasionally. That seems like a silly argument to me. So there you go. There's my Gourami tank that we're not going to do anything to tonight other than check the water. The water looks fine. I'm not worried about it. The filter's still running. The fish have been fed. The water's clean enough. And I'm going to get on with the rest of my evening. So make sure you're subscribed. I really will be getting in here one of these days, hopefully tomorrow. And we're going to tackle this tank. And I'm going to, you know, do it all in video. I might do like some fast forward video while I'm in there scrubbing it and cleaning it and all that stuff. But I will do a nice full video of everything I'm going to be doing to this tank, and hopefully that will be coming up within the next day or two. So again, if you're subscribed, you won't miss that or anything else. So thanks again for watching. Don't forget, this one is my Gourami tank, and I will see you real soon in the next one.